So in today's programming tutorial, I'm going to teach you a little bit about variables. And while I'm specifically going to use Python for a lot of this, just know that variables are something you're going to see in essentially every programming language, and a lot of what I'm going to say is applicable to most programming languages, so this is more general, but I will be using Python as sort of a guide, I guess. So first, let's talk about what exactly a variable is. So a variable is anything that stores a single piece of data. It has a name and it stores, and I use the word store somewhat loosely, and it holds or references a piece of data more accurately. So let's say we have a equals 4. What this means is that a, which is the name of our variable we have just created, is being assigned the value of 4. And it's just anything that holds this single piece of data, and it can hold on to it for as long as we need in the program, and then we can reference it later. And as you'll remember, last video we talked about how data is just anything that's a quantitative or qualitative description of something. So it's very useful for holding this information and then referencing it later on. But what exactly is happening here? Well, if we go up to this little presentation I got here, the way data is stored on a computer is actually quite interesting, but the gist of it is that the data is physically stored as ones and zeros in what we call the memory of the computer. And the memory of the computer can be broken up into addresses or locations, essentially. So this right here might be a small piece of memory. So we have the address 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 6 addresses in total. Now each of these addresses holds an object, and we'll have an entire video dedicated to objects, but just know that they're like real world objects. They have data about them, and some of them can even do things. Now everything in Python essentially is an object. So integers are objects, strings are objects, floats are objects. These are all objects. And so if you create the variable like we do over here, a, we give it the name a, and we assign it 4. So if we go over here, that would be the same as writing a 4. Okay? So now this variable a is not holding the 4, rather, more accurately, it is pointing to where the 4 is located in memory. So that's pretty interesting. So the assignment operator really directs the variable towards the location in memory that holds the data you want referenced. So it's very important to remember that, because if you think of variables as containers that hold data, it can actually create some problems for you. But also, come over here, let's say we have b equals a. We assign b a. What does that mean? Is b now pointing towards a? Well, actually, no. What this really means is that we're just assigning them the same memory location. So now b is also pointing at this 4. Now integers, floats, and other primitive types in Python, these actually are what we call immutable types. Well, actually not all of them are immutable, but the majority of them are what we call immutable. And what this means is that you cannot change them. So this 4 cannot be changed. It's always going to be a 4 unless we erase it and put a new object in that memory location. So if we were to say a equals 3 now, we actually wouldn't change this 4. Rather, what we would do, we would come in here, and we would instead direct a to a new memory address with a new object. And b does not change, because b is still pointing towards the same memory location. Never did we tell it to change that. So now if you print the value of b, you're still going to get 4, and if you print the value of a, you'll get 3. So that's how that works. But there are what we call mutable types, such as arrays. So an array can be changed without actually creating a new object. And as we talked about last video, an array is just a sort of sequential or linear list of items. So here we create this array R. And the way arrays work is in memory, you have the first item in the array. Hold on, and clear all this out. So you would have this first item in the array right here in the memory, and then all the other items actually follow directly after in the memory. So we would have, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're not going to put anything in there. Okay. So we would have those values sequentially. So R is pointing at this array. Pointing at this whole thing. And C is also pointing at the exact same array. So they're pointing at the same thing. Now if I change a singular value by using its index, and we'll talk more about this later, but we used index, we change the first value to 10. Okay. And what's going to happen is that both C and R are going to undergo that change. Both of them are going to be changed. If you print their value, you will get this array right here for both of them. So that's the difference between mutable and immutable types. Very important distinction to make. So that was the gist of variables in Python. Just remember that variables reference objects stored in memory, and they can hold information for you that you can reference later. They're extremely important. Next video, we're going to be talking about operators in Python and how to use those. Until then,